Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Adnan Hossain, Senior Lecturer, Department of English, Dhaka College, Dhaka. So today, what we are going to discuss is transformation of sentence, and the category is from simple sentence to the complex one. Now, what is simple sentence and what is complex and what is compound sentence? In the simple sentence, we find only one principal clause and nothing else. That is, there will be a subject followed by a finite verb and an extension. While in the complex sentence, we find a subordinate clause which is dominated by a principal one. So, let's discuss the transformation from the simple sentence to complex. The first structure, as you see, that is subject plus present participle plus extension. So if the example is the boy playing in the ground is my friend, then we can see that the structure is here the subject is the boy, playing is the present participle, and the other part is the extension. Here is the verb is, it is playing the task of the finite verb. Now when we are turning it into the complex one, then we can say that at first we will use the subject and then we will bring a relative pronoun, and relative pronoun will be brought in consideration of the fact that whether the subject is a person or an inanimate object. Here we find that the boy is a living being, he is a person, so we are using who. Then the boy who is playing in the ground is my friend. So here it is subject plus relative pronoun plus auxiliary verb. The auxiliary verb is, and then main verb plus ing, that is the present participle, and then we are bringing the extension part. So we will not change the verb at all. What we are doing, we are just bringing the relative pronoun here. The second example is the car imported from Japan is running well. So here we are doing the car which was imported from Japan is running well. Here we find that the car imported from Japan. So the word imported is a past tense. That is the reason we are using was, that is which was imported. We see that although the structure is subject plus present participle, but when it will be the past participle, then we will not use present participle, we will use just the past participle, as we have used the present participle in the former example. That is, at the first example we are using relative pronoun plus the auxiliary verb is, then the present participle. As we find, the present participle was present in the simple sentence, the boy playing in the ground. Here we find that the car imported from Japan. So here we find a past participle, so we will use the past participle one instead of the present participle one when we are turning it into the complex one. And the other part will remain the same. That is the subject plus relative pronoun, then we see the auxiliary verb was, then imported, that is the past participle one plus extension. So whether it is present participle or past participle, ultimately it will be preceded by a relative pronoun plus auxiliary verb. Now the auxiliary verb, if we will use was or were or is or are, that will be determined by the number and number of the subject, and of course by the tense of the sentence. As it is in past tense, the second one, so we are using was. As it was in present tense, the earlier one, so we are using the boy who is. And of course, if it would be like the boys, then we will use the boy who are. That is, as the subject is the plural one, so we will use are here, not is. So let's proceed. The second one is adjective plus noun plus extension. So a sentence with a adjective: an industrious boy can shine in life. It will be turned into complex in the following formula, that is article plus adjective. So when we see the example, that is how we have turned it into complex. A boy who is industrious. So at first the article, then the adjective, then the relative pronoun, then the noun will come, and then we see the relative pronoun. Then we find that the relative pronoun who, it is followed by the auxiliary verb is, and then adjective industrious, and then extension. So please correct the formula, that is in the slide it is written article plus adjective. It will be corrected, it will be actually article plus noun, as we see that a boy, so a is the article and the word boy is actually the noun. So our adjective will be placed after the relative pronoun and the auxiliary verb. Here the relative pronoun is who and the auxiliary verb is. If we say that the poor people are suffering, so the people who are poor, so the people who are poor are suffering. Now here we are using at first the article, then the noun, the people, then who are poor. So who are, the relative pronoun is who, and then we are using the auxiliary verb are. We are using are because here the poor people are suffering. This sentence actually representing the whole poor class. It is representing the plural number, and that is the reason we are using are, the auxiliary verb are, which is actually used for the plural number, not for the singular ones, as here in the slide we have used. That is, we are using is in the slide because the example given in the slide is actually based on a singular number, an industrious boy. So these things should be remembered when we are transforming the sentences. The next structure is, if any sentence contains the word, the auxiliary verb being, in a simple sentence, then in the complex sentence we will use since plus subject plus extension. Now it is like, the weather being hot, I could not drink it. In the complex one, we can see it is solved like, since the weather was hot, I could not drink it. Now here we are not touching the principal clause, that is, I could not drink it. But what we are doing, we are touching the other portion, that is, first we are using the word since, then we are using the subject, the water. Instead of being, we are bringing a to be verb, that is, here we see it is was. Then the extension part will remain the same. Let's think about the second example, where we see, being poor, Rubel could not buy a pen. It is, since Rubel was poor, he could not buy a pen. So what are the differences between the first example and the second one? In the second example, we see there is only one subject, that is Rubel, while in the first example we see that there are two subjects. In the first part, that is at the subordinate part, we see the subject is the water, while at the principal part we see the subject is I. When we find that there is only one subject, then as we have transformed the subordinate part with the formula like since plus subject Rubel plus the verb was, then the extension poor, then what will we do with the principal one? Because here we don't have any option to use any other subject. We will just use the pronoun which is suitable for the subject, that is, as Rubel is a singular male, so we are using he here. If it was like being poor, Salma could not buy a pen, it would be like she could not buy a pen, or being poor, you could not buy a pen, it would be since you were poor, you could not buy a pen. And of course, we must be very much attentive about tense when we are transforming. For example, if the first sentence was like that, the water being very hot, I cannot drink it, and if I transform it in like, since the water was very hot, I could not drink it, it would be wrong one, because the question is saying that I cannot drink it, that is, it will be in present tense. So the sentence would be at that time, since the water is very hot, I cannot drink it. And of course, instead of was, at that time we will use is. So when we are using the auxiliary verbs, we must think about the tense when we are transforming a sentence. 2 plus adjective plus 2. So this is a very common and very familiar simple sentence to us, that is, he is too weak to walk. The complex will be, he is so weak, that is so plus adjective plus that, he is so weak that he cannot walk. Sorry, it would be cannot, not could not. So he is so weak that he cannot walk. Let's see the second one. The load is too heavy for me to carry. This would be a different formula. The load is so heavy that I cannot carry it. We are using the word it here to refer to the first subject, that is the load. In the second formula, in the second example, we see there are two subjects, that is the load and of course I. So in this case, the it is referring to the first one, that is the first subject, the load, will be turned into the object of the principal clause, that is I cannot carry it. But in the first example, that is, he is so weak that he cannot walk, could not will not be used, it will be actually cannot. So he is so weak that he cannot walk. Here there is only one subject, so we need not to bring any pronoun as object at the principal part, because there is only one subject here, so we need not to refer anything else. Then 2 plus main verb, it will be like, the girl sold her hair to buy a gift for her husband. So it would be, the girl sold her hair, this is the principal clause, so it would be unchanged. The change will happen when we are using so that, that is, the girl sold her hair, then we are using so that, then we are using the subject she could buy a gift for her husband. That would be so that plus subject plus can, may, could or might plus main verb plus extension. So when we are using modal verbs like can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, ought, etc., of course the main verb will be in the base form, in the present form. So here we see that the girl sold her hair to buy a gift for her husband. When we are transforming it, what we are doing, that is, the girl sold her hair so that she could buy a gift for her husband. So that plus the subject. Now here we are using the pronoun of the subject, because there is only one subject here. What will happen if there are two subjects? For example, the army is fighting to save the people of the country. So the army is fighting so that they can save the people of the country. Here also we find that there is only one subject, but if it is like the army is fighting so that the people of country can be safe, so the it is like the army is fighting to ensure the safety of the people of country. The army is fighting to ensure the safety of the people of country. So it can be into two ways, that is, the army is fighting so that they can ensure the safety of the people of country, or the army is fighting so that the safety of the people of country can be ensured. So even if there are two different subjects, the structure will remain the same, that is, can or could plus the main verb plus the other part. Now if we use in spite of or despite in simple sentence, then we will use though or although to make it complex. Like, in spite of his being healthy, he had a heart attack. So in the complex one, when we are doing like though he was very healthy, he had a heart attack. Or in the second example, in spite of his wealth, he is a miser. Though he has wealth, he is a miser. So what are the difference? What are the differences between the two examples? Let's mark. At the first one, in spite of his being healthy. Now, after in spite of, we see the possessive form of the subject, and then we see being, that is verb plus ing. It can be having also, that is, in spite of his having wealth he is a miser. It can be. Or like the first one, in spite of his being healthy he had a heart attack. So we will ensure that the principal part will be unchanged, that is, he had a heart attack. This is the principal clause. This part will be unchanged. All the techniques will be applied in the at this part, which will remain subordinate clause in the complex sentence. So at first we are using though or although, then we are using the subject he, then we are using was because we see being here. If it was having, we will use had, though he had. So though he was very healthy, he had a heart attack. At the second sentence we see that after the possessive word his, after the possessive pronoun his, we find a noun instead of any verb. That is, when we are doing something with in spite of, it can be done into two ways. If the clause with in spite of is dealing with an adjective, then of course there will be an auxiliary verb like being. Always, it will be always when we are dealing with adjective. For example, in spite of his being wealthy, he is a miser. In spite of his being poor, he is happy. So the auxiliary verb being always comes before the adjective when we are doing dealing the structure having in spite of. But when we can find a sentence with a noun like the second one where we see the noun wealth. So in spite of his wealth, he is a miser. In this case, we will use though plus the subject plus has. Though he has wealth, he is a miser. Now you can say that we have was two examples with verb to be, verb to have. The first one was with verb to be, being, and then it was turned into was. The second one having a noun, and it was turned into a sentence with verb to have. Though he has wealth, he is a miser. What will happen when there will be a principal verb? Like, in spite of his working hard, he failed in the exam. So it would be changed like, though he worked hard, he failed in the exam. So this, in these cases, that is when there is a main verb instead of any verb to be or any verb to have, we will use the formula like though plus subject plus main verb. In spite of his working hard, he failed in the exam. Though he worked hard. Though plus subject he plus main verb worked, then the extension part. Though he worked hard, he failed in the exam. Then comes the next structure, that is subject plus verb plus object plus present participle. I saw the bird flying in the sky. I saw the bird which was flying in the sky. So here we see that there is a principal clause, that is subject plus verb plus object. Then we find it is followed by a present participle, flying in the sky. So when we are turning it into complex, what we will do, that is the principal part will remain the same, I saw the bird. Then we will bring the relative pronoun which, and then there will be an extension with the present participle, and it will be into continuous tense because it is with present participle. When we are using present participle, then we will use the continuous tense. When we are using past participle, then we will use the simple past tense. Now in case of continuous tense, what kind of continuous tense we are going to use? Will it be present continuous or will it be past continuous? It depends upon the tense of the simple sentence, because here we see that at the simple sentence, at the simple form, it is I saw the bird, so it is in past form. So when we are turning it into complex, what we are doing, I saw the bird which was flying in the exam. So here we see which plus the auxiliary verb was plus flying, of course the present participle one, then the extension will remain the same. But if it would, I see a bird flying in the sky, I see a bird which is flying in the sky, because it is in the present tense, not in the past one. Then see, subject plus verb plus adjective plus noun. So a simple sentence having an adjective. I saw a lame man. Of course it will be turned into complex with a relative pronoun. The formula is I saw a man, subject plus verb plus noun, then the relative pronoun will come who, then who was lame, then we will use a be verb, and then we will bring the adjective. The question is, I saw a wealthy man. What will we do? I saw a man who had wealth. So in this case, instead of verb to be, we will use the adjective. In which cases we will use adjective, and in which instead of to be verb, we are using the verb to have. So in which cases we are going to use verb to be, and in which cases we are going to use verb to have. Let's think about the example given in the slide and the example I have said just now. I saw a lame man. Lame is is an adjective. This is actually a kind of personal adjective, that is or adjective of quality, that is, it is referring to the condition of a particular person. But when we were using any abstract noun as the adjective of quality, like I saw a healthy man, then we will use the verb to have form, that is, I saw a man who has good health. I saw a man who has wealth. But when I am saying that I saw a lame man, in that case it would be I saw a man who was lame. So here we don't need to use any verb to have, rather we are using a to be verb. So the formula is subject plus verb plus the noun a man plus relative pronoun who, then the auxiliary verb, here we will use the be verb was, and then the adjective. If it is with any extension, like I saw a man when I saw a man, a lame man crossing the field, I saw a man crossing the field who was lame. It can be. it doesn't matter what is the extension, because extension is extension. Extension is the part which we do not change actually when we are transforming the forms of the sentence. Then the next subject is a simple sentence with the phrase to be, not the to be verb, rather to be. I know him to be honest. The simple form will be, I know that he is honest. So it will be like subject I plus verb know plus the relative pronoun that plus the object turn would be subject. That is the object of this sentence is the first one, that is when it was in the simple form the object was him. Now it will be the subject for the subordinate clause, that is he. Him will be turned into he. Then the verb will come, and of course as there is the phrase to be in the simple form, so it will be in the complex form. It will be a to be verb, not anything else. That is, he is honest. I knew him to be honest. I knew that he was honest. Tense can be changed, but of course with the to be verb, not anything else, because at the simple form we find the phrase to be is present, so always the relative pronoun and the subject will be followed by a to be verb. Then the extension will be remain as it is. In case of any season or any time, like the cuckoo sings in spring. The cuckoo sings when it is spring. So when I am saying that the cuckoo sings in spring, when we are mentioning any time, it will be like subject, the cuckoo, then the verb sings, then when, then it plus the to be verb, then the time. This is the extension. So in case of any time we will use when. When I am using at the time of, for example in this example, at the simple form we are saying I saw him at the time of playing. At the complex one we are saying I saw him when he was playing. So we will use the word when, the relative pronoun when, in case it is mentioning any particular time or season like spring, morning, evening, or the phrase at the time of is mentioned. I saw him when he was playing. When plus the subject, the object will be turned into subject, that is he. Then the to be verb will be turned into the then the to be verb, then the main verb plus ing plus extension. That is, I saw him at the time of playing. Here we are saying I saw him at first. The principal clause will remain as it is. Then we are using the word when. Then we see he, the subject is the object of the principal clause, him, has been turned into the subject of the subordinate clause, and then we are using the helping verb, here the to be verb was, and then the extension ing, playing. So dear students, this is actually today's discussion on the simple to complex, and of course you can solve the exercises on complex to simple just reversing the structures. If you reverse the structures, that is those simple structures we have used today as the questions and the complex one as the answers, If we reverse the situation, the complex one being used as the questions and the simple one are being used as the answers, then we will find that we have also learned complex to simple. So simple to complex, complex to simple is finished today, and if you study more, of course you will find some more examples. So be safe and study hard, get ready for your future. Thank you everyone.